Joe, Mortgage Giant, are you not playing? Come on, tell us what happened.
All right. So I wanted to cover a couple things that have recently come up. So the first part is, did you know that you cannot get traditional financing with an irrevocable trust? Right? So the important piece here is, if you have an irrevocable trust, we have to get it out of the irrevocable trust to then close in either their name or in a regular trust. And then after closing, they could go back and put it in irrevocable if they want. This really comes when, let's say, the person dies who has a trust, the trustee inherits it, it becomes irrevocable, and in this particular situation, she's able to use the property until she dies, at which time his kids then would gain access to that trust, right? It causes an issue, for example, because she's trying to use it the way she wants, get into a smaller house, right? But if it comes out of that trust, what do we do, right? Now all of a sudden, do the kids still have the right? And so just let your clients know that you need to ask some questions before giving them definitive answers, because it can cause some offense. Second thing I wanted to cover was DSCR loans. Is everybody familiar with the DSCR loan? No, debt service coverage ratio, right? So this is an investment product. It's an extremely popular program right now because investors who want to purchase, different properties don't have to have the income to qualify for that, right? All that we care about is, does the rents received cover the mortgage, right? So what I mean by that is, if you have a $2,500 mortgage payment, are you getting $2,500 in rents, right? Now they will go lower, right? So you'll hear us refer to ratios. So 0.75. So is it getting 75% of it? Is it getting 1.0 or 1% or 1.25? Right? The better that ratio is, so if it's making more money, the better the terms. So the lower the interest rate, potentially lower the down payment, they'll allow those type of things. And this can be done on, we use a lot on 1 to 4 units. There are actually a commercial version also that'll do 5 to 8. But the 1 to 4 units, what you're probably going to deal with most. And so if you ever have those scenarios and you have a client that wants to get into investment properties, it's a great tool to look at. The most important thing is to figure out what are the going rents in that area for that property type, to help us gauge, if they need to put more money down, if it's a viable option, right? Buying a duplex in Davis that's $1 million, probably not going to cash flow in the way we're looking for, but buying something that's a
Buying a duplex in Stockton.
Absolutely. And especially with right now with rent softening a little bit, it's just important to kind of look at what that, the landscape is. But any kind of questions on the SCRs? Can definitely go into a lot more detail, but so they had most often it's 25%, right? Because investment products, that's what they like to see, right? They want you to have a little more skin in the game. But DSCR, there's actually options down as low as 15% if the rents cover, or 20%, which is what I do most commonly, because it's kind of that point in between minimum investment with the best benefit. Yeah. And another thing on DSCR loans, lenders in most states don't have to be licensed in other states to do these because they're investment only products. There are a few exceptions, but for example, if you get something that's in North Dakota, right? I might not be licensed in North Dakota, but I could do the loan there. So just kind of keep that in mind.
Thank you, Joe. Okay. I want to talk about convince sellers to list at a price to sell. Now, the reason is in the market right now, about 30% of listings are expiring or canceling without an offer accepted. And that's because agents are listing agents with their sellers are listing the price too high. And so, and actually, even in our brokerage, that's 30%. Our brokerage is doing about 25% cancellations or expirations on our listing. So I wanted, what if you could get your seller to agree to the price that you want at the beginning? Oh, that's not. Because we see a lot of you also listing high and doing price reductions, trying to chase the market, which I know a lot of you want to build into your price reductions. But what if you get them right at the beginning at their price? Okay. This is what I used to do, and I would say I would get about 75% of my sellers to agree to the price that I want. And I would say 50% of the time, by the end of the conversation, they ask me what we should list at, and I told them what we should list at. So, and this is the way I presented it at listing presentations, and I'm gonna show you right now. So, you know about me, I don't need to talk about that. Step one, when you talk to the seller on the phone, you gotta understand where their price is in their head and where the information is coming from. Now, oftentimes they won't tell you, just come and tell me, but they're gonna say, I've had objections on this, right? Price, but you need to get their price. No one in this world right now is gonna list their home, call an agent to list their home for sale without looking at the numbers online. But we all agree. So they have some number in mind. They've already calculated the estimated cost and their payoff, and they actually roughly kind of calculate their net already. And that's why they're calling you, right? And the problem is most of the time when they tell you, if you get this number, what do they tell you a number? It's usually, is it higher, average, or below what you think the price should be? Yeah, it's like 90% of the time. So often I get objections. Sellers will sometimes say, well, that's your job to tell me what the value of my home is. You get that objection? I haven't looked, I don't have any value in mind. That's just someone giving you, they all have. So I just say, it is my job to give my opinion on the value of a house. And I know every seller doesn't make a decision to potentially sell without a value in mind. And that's important for me to know this so we can be on the same page. And I use that as a retort on that objection. And I would say I never have a hard time getting at least a value in mind or a value range from the seller. Okay. You need to get the information source. Okay. That means where do they get this? I would say 75% of the time it is Zillow. And I would say 25% of the time it's my neighbor sold this. My friend told me this. This house sold on this corner. Does it make sense? That kind of information. You need to get that information in detail because the process requires you to separate. You can't say you don't know what you're talking about to the seller on comps. You have to go and say your logic is flawed. So you don't harsh the seller, you harsh their logic. Make sense? And so otherwise you're going to offend the seller if you do that. You have to harsh the logic. So what does that mean? You can't harsh their logic unless you know where they're getting the information from, because you have to harsh the source or their interpretation of the source. So, for example, we'll get to that. So just know you have to get the source. If it's a comp, if it's a house down the street or something like that, please find it. I've had sellers call me and I've tried to find the comp and I find out it's 2 years ago, right? Like during COVID or something, right? Like you got to find that comp. Even if you don't know it, it's not the current comps, I go back and grab that comp and put it in the comps because you need to talk about it. So if it is a comp, you have to go find it, even if it's hella old, you got to grab it, right? So, okay, or it doesn't apply, you still got to grab it and put it in. Okay. Property to do comp the property, pull your own comps from MLS. Please do not I see a lot of agents relying on the realist tax comps. Please don't do that. If you're doing that, you're losing yourself the money. I feel you're not doing your fiduciary duty. You're being lazy. So I can go over comping. I don't have time to go over how to comp today. I have another class happening next Wednesday where I can go in more detail on how I comp and how to comp properties. But if you're doing that, but I recommend you pull all actives, pendings, and solds, because you're going to have to tell the seller a story. So I pull all actives, pendings, and solds. And you need to come to a price opinion. And I recommend a range. I recommend you look at the comps. You should be able to come to a bad range. The house is in poor condition, the house is in average condition, and the house is in high level, in great condition. I recommend you go there because you're going to have a range. And the problem is that sellers are going to say, my house is awesome. And you get there and it's dated to the 1980s. Does it make sense? And you're like, and sometimes they say my house is okay. And you get there and it's like spectacular, right? So what you have to do is have a range there, and you can use Cloud CMA, but I've always used this the one-page form and to talk about it. But that you need to make sure you have that range in your head, because when you walk in the door, you need to be able to say, okay, it's going to be 500, 525, 550, depending on the quality of the home. This is the average home. I'm going to pay 525. Make sense? You got to be able to come with that as you walk the home initially. So we good? This is the pretty easy part. This is like, standard 101. Okay. During the list, before you walk the property, you do your presentation. You're going to get to the point where you talk about price. Please don't start with price. You should do the other objections and redo their motivation. I'm not going to detail that, but When you get to the presentation, I'll say, so sounds like we're ready to talk price. So they're like, yeah. If they say no, that means they're not okay with you as an agent. You need to do more rapport and building, trust building. But if they are, they'll say yes. And I said, I always use the script now. I say, before we talk about the comps, I want to show how real estate pricing works. The great thing about real estate is that all numbers are public, so we have a very good sense of how to price a property to maximize the value of your house. Is that okay? And I have never had any seller say, no, I don't want to talk about that, about how we should price a home to maximize the value of my home. Make sense? So, okay. They're like, sure, let's talk about that. Then I bring up the pricing pyramid. Now, some of you see this because if you use Cloud CMA, it's in there. Some of you use it, some of you don't. But I use it at a very high level. This is where you're going to use logic. Remember, the trust triangle is empathy. What is it? Transparency, logic. So if you try to just use one to establish trust, you need to establish all three. I recommend when you're doing listing presentation, you use the logic on this part, because this is where you can convince the sellers to get off their price and get on your price. Okay, so I say the best way to maximize the value of your home is to get multiple offers on the home, right? If we get multiple offers on the home, guess what? We have leverage in the negotiation. I can find you the best offer, the best terms, anything you want if I got multiple people in love with your home, wanting your home. Would you agree? And they're like, yeah, that would be awesome. Okay, great. I said, okay. And the price is dramatically important to doing that. Why? Because here's our study, and here's what it is. This is part. If we list your home at market value, whatever we think market value is, if we list it at market value, 60% of people will come see your home. And I'm confident if we list the home at market value, and I get 60% of the buyers in our current market to come see your home, I'm going to have offers for you to look at. Make sense? Like, yeah, okay. I go, but it's dramatic on this. If we go 10, and actually it's more rate sensitive now, so I even change this to 5 and 10. If you're 5% above, it drops my showings in half. If I go 10% above price, it drops my showings to 1 in 10. 10% of buyers will see your house. Crickets. Make sense? And so, would you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, agree? No one is going to make an offer on your home and love your home and bid high on your home unless they've seen your home. So it's imperative that I get them into your home and see your home. And the problem is pricing is going to hurt me and you in the end, because you're the one getting the benefit of this. It's going to hurt me getting you multiple offers. So it's imperative that we do not overstep the market value of your home on pricing. It's very important because it will literally diminish. And what does that look like? If I'm 5% over, it'll look like we're getting some people at open houses. Our open houses, we're getting showings with no offers. If we're 10% above, it's crickets. I get 1 to 2 people at an open house and I get a showing here and there, no action, crickets. So, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you will see if we're overpriced right away, the market will tell you right away, right? So I preface that because if you do need a price reduction, you need to talk about that. I go, similarly, you can drop the price. We can be below market value and it will be like gangbusters. I will have 2 open houses and we will have 50 people there. We will have 26 offers and we'll figure out what your highest price is right away and get a contract on your terms. And similarly, if go down. Now, I would not recommend this unless you want a quick sale. And actually, I've had some sellers say, I want a quick sale because they're being deployed or something like that. Like, let's do quick. Make sense? So I say similarly to go down. But it's very important that we be somewhere in here. And I always end this. So help me by pricing your home at the market value range or below to maximize your price. Help me help you. Help me help you. This is another thing. I also found there's another thing that you need to know about pricing a home and how it affects the value of your home. Is there's a third thing. Most people know price and condition are the main drivers of what affects the value of a home, right? We know that price and condition, also market and market standards. But the biggest thing that people don't understand that affects the value of their home is time on market. And they say, what do you mean? I mean, like this, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. Now, at this point, I talk to them and I say, make them put their buyer hat on and go, you're selling this house to go buy a home in Texas, buy a home in Idaho, whatever, right? Wherever they're going to buy, do this. I said, you're going to talk to an agent, or maybe you're already talking to an agent, or maybe, and I'm sure you're already looking at homes there. But I'm like, yeah, okay. I said, great. If you saw a home that was priced at a price, but it was 100 days on market, what do you think about that home? And what do they say? Something's wrong with it. It's overpriced, or it's overpriced, or something's wrong, right? And I go, exactly, because days on market, time on market will affect buyers' perception of your house and by therefore affect the value of the house. Makes sense? So literally being on the market, testing the market at a high price diminishes your value. Every day we're on, it's literally diminishing your value over time. And most sellers don't understand that. And I say, I draw this graph, and I actually just physically go up. But I say, here's an example, days and views of showings, days on market. And I go, look, everyone knows right now because of the internet and everything, the minute I put a listing online, I'm going to get a ton of interest. It's brand new, right? Everyone is going to look at it. And you guys know, like you listed Thursday, by the Saturday, Sunday, it's like game, but like if it's popular, it's there. Does it make sense? That's what happens. It's happening. So I say, okay, great. And quickly it dies off. Would we all agree? I mean, I'd say 7, by the time you hit the second weekend on your new listing, and if we have no offers, is it kind of slowing down? All right, so you can magically see this decline, and then it just sits there. And you get a showing here, you get a showing there. And the problem is after this, if we have no offers, when you're sitting here, all we are capturing is any new buyer that comes to the market, right? That everyone else has already seen it and discounted it, and now we're waiting here. And then you're like, no, but that's okay. That's 14 days in, 17 days. Let's do a price reduction. Like build it in. You price here. We'll try your price, and then I'll try mine later, which I know a lot of you do because I see it. And you say you do a price reduction, Rich. Okay, so, and I say day 17. Okay, great. And the problem is I never get this back. I only get this. Why? And this is human nature. And I said human nature is this. When buyers look at home, when you look at homes online and you're looking to move to Texas, you don't qualify homes, you disqualify homes. Buyers don't qualify homes, they disqualify homes. That means that home's overpriced. That home's not our condition. I don't like that home. And guess what? If in their brain they said they already liked it, and you go back to them and say, but I dropped the price, very few buyers will go back and look at it, even if they see the price drop, because in their head, they've already disqualified it. In their mind, they're saying, I don't care what they drop it to, it's not worth it. Does it make sense? If they tag your house as overpriced, it's hard to get them to move that off their head. Even you'd have to drive it dramatically to get them to move off that they think it's overpriced. Makes sense? If you do a 5,000, 10,000 reduction, it's not going to move them off the thought that they are overpriced because they already tagged your house as overpriced. Make sense? So that's why I get a bump and I get a bump, and you chase the market. And actually, if you look at real estate stats, this process, by the time you get down here and you chase the market, most of the time, those listings actually sell for less than market value. They actually end up down here because time on market diminished their market value over time, and they end up down here because they chase the market. Now, Mr. Masello, I don't want you to have that. I don't want to do that. So it's very imperative that I get this. And the problem is, if I overprice it, this, instead of this, I get this at the beginning. If I overprice it, I only get this. So, Mr. Seller, with this, I can't get you multiple offers. This will not give you multiple. This will give you multiple. I need this. And they're like, okay. And then I all ended with the qualifier, said, does that make sense? And I haven't even talked about comps yet. I haven't talked about anything. I said, this is how pricing works. Does that make sense? And so I said, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, help me help you get the maximum value for a house by getting something at market value or below on the price of your house, and that will drive the traffic that we need to make sure that we have this. Now, when you're saying this, you have to say this confidently. If you don't say this confidently, it's going to come off like you don't believe it. And this is a logic show. This is you counteracting their logic. Does it make sense of what they think about pricing the home? So you need to come off strong with this. We all good? All right. Then I say, okay, are you ready to talk about comps? And they're like, yes, let's talk about comps. I say, show the flaws. You have to show their flawed logic. So number one is I always start with whatever their source or comp was. And I say, oh, Mr. McCullough, you told me you were interested in this value because you got it off Zillow. that make sense? I want to talk about Zillow. So, if you Zillow. David, can you pull up another, minimize it, pull up a browser? Okay, sorry for it. And just make another tab. And Google Zillow accuracy estimate. Just Google. Scroll down. And go ahead. So what does this mean? So scroll. Hit it. Hit the link. Hit the link. Pull up. The one down. Yeah. Okay, scroll down. You'll see this. Scroll to Sacramento. Okay, there. So Sacramento. So I tell them, here's Zillow's accuracy. In Sacramento, they say they are 87.56% accurate. And they're like, wow, that seems pretty high. I go, but that's if the sale price is within 5% range. That means whatever their estimate happens and whatever the house actually sells at in the future, they say they're in accuracy within 5%. They're 90% of the time accuracy 5%. I go, your house is $500,000. 5% of that is 25,000. So as long as I go up 25,000 or 475 to 525, if I fall in there, I'm accurate. I go, as an agent, if I said, hey, your house is somewhere between 475 and 525, what would you say? Like, you're not the agent for me, like, give me a price, right? Does it make sense? And so while Zillow is a guide, it's not that accurate. In fact, they have to give themselves on average a 50,000, 60,000 band range on pricing a home to even call themselves accurate. And even then they're only 85% accurate with a 50,000 range on average. Does that make sense? And so, and I go, look, they're 96% within 10% sales. Okay, I'm within 100,000 range and I'm accurate. Well, I can tell you, Mr. Seller, I could on the phone look at comps and I could be within a 10% range of your value of your home. So can we all agree that Zillow is a great guide, but it's not accurate to the value of your home? Make sense? You're gonna get, I don't know, how many times their information from Zillow? I'd say 80% of the time. When you talk to sellers, or maybe you're not even checking, so I don't even know. What?
More than 80.
More than 80?
80.
Yeah. So
Anybody with a smartphone on Zillow.
okay, so what you need to do is you need to have this very ready. I mean, print it out, whatever you need to do, but you need to, if it's a Zillow, and I used to just carry it with me because a lot of times it was just Zillow by default, right? So you need to be able to discount Zillow. But see, this is me showing their flawed logic. It's not saying seller, you're bad. I'm saying seller, your source of information is bad. Or not even say it's bad. I say it's not accurate for what we need. Does that make sense? And that's me getting them off of their list price. Make sense? Okay. If it's a comp, you need to talk about the comp. Can you go back to slides? You need to talk about the comp. If it was 2 years ago, you need to talk about I did a listing and the guy's like, this listing, and literally the comp was 2 years ago. And I'm like, but this house sold at this price. And I was like, Mr. Seller, if you're going to buy a home and I told you the value that you see is high, and I tell you the value is okay because a house sold at that price 2 years ago, what are you gonna say? You're like, that's a different market. That was during COVID. That was when interest rates were low. Exactly. So you're asking me to value your home based on that when you won't even do it yourself when you buy a home. Does that make sense? So you gotta get them off of that comp. You gotta get them off of Zillow. Make sense? Roll through the comp to verify starting. Now, in my comps, a lot of people like just do the solds. I do active, pendings, and solds. And what you need to do is you need to have actives, definitely actives, pendings, and solds that tell the story of your previous your logic slides. So you're gonna have an active on there that has been 100 days on market without an offer and it's dropped the price twice. Make sense? You gotta have people and then you want pendings and solds that show people who overpriced it and what they did. You want to say, you need to know if they dropped it 3 times to get to that price, you didn't know. If you can tell the story where someone was too long on market, got below market value, that'd be the best sold comp. But you need also comps that show you someone that priced it right and closed it and got a contract within 10 days, and they closed that near their market value or at their market value or above the list price. You need those comps too. Because those will say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I don't want you to experience this, and I don't want you to experience 100 days on market, because that's a pain, because all I'm gonna do is come to you and beat you up about how you're overpriced and we need to reduce the price. And I don't think you want to have that conversation continually. And also every day, you're gonna have to keep the house super clean in case a showing happens, and we're only having one every other week because we're overpriced, right? So you're gonna have to maintain a home that's clean. I don't want that situation. Do you want that? No. Okay. Then I say at the end, and then I know about you, based on the discussion and the comps, what do you believe the market value is? That's what I ended. After we go to the discussion. And you know what they say? I would say 50% of the time, when I ask that question, what's the seller's response? I would say 50% of the time, John, what do you think we should price it at? Literally, they asked me to set the price. Now, how many of you on 50% of the time on your listings will love for the seller to ask you to set the price? If you could set the price 50% of the time of listings, would you sell that listing right away? Yeah, a whole lot faster, right? So you got to understand there's a logic to getting them off of their price and getting them onto your price. And this is a process of making you look like the expert. You see my whole logic here? It's saying, you're not saying it, you're showing it, but you're saying, I'm the expert because I do real estate every day. And I appreciate your knowledge that you got on the internet, but it's quite not up to stuff, is what you're really saying, right? Now you're saying it in a very nice, logical way. But don't discount them, you have to discount their information. So discount the comp, discount the accuracy of Zillow, but you have to be able to do that to make it happen. Make sense? When they say this, sometimes they'll say a price. If they say a price and it's in your range, it's above. If they still say a price, it's above your range. Now, probably after this, I have people say, I've had literally people say, John, based on what you're saying in the comps, the price should be $550, but I still need $625. Have you had that? Okay. I would say, great. Why do you need $625? They don't need $625. They need the net. Does it make sense? Always go to the net, and they don't sometimes figure out their net well because they're not. Remember, people list on their net. They don't list on the price. The price is just in their mind calculating to get to the net. So I short circuit that situation. What I say is, when they say value, either I propose a value or they say a value. And most of the time, I would say 80% of the time, even if they say a value, they'll say a value that's in my range of where I want to be. That makes sense? Based on my comp. So they'll come to me with the value that's appropriate. They'll come off their price and come to a value that they feel is appropriate. So sometimes I don't even need to counteract them. Sometimes they're coming to the price already of what I want. And then and then I close. Once I have price, I say, okay. And this is a little bit of math, so I know it's gonna be a little bit tough. So I do this right on my phone and I close there. I don't talk about commissions. I don't talk about any of those. I don't do any of that. All I do is I open my phone, I pull my calculator out, and I calculate what they're gonna approximately net and I show them. So if I net you that, will you sign? And they will say, most of the time when you show them a net and you do it on your phone, just off the cuff, what it shows them is it solidifies you're the expert. The same things, people that can do things just on their phone in their head and do things like that. And actually those graphs I showed you, you should print them, but also if you can draw them while you're talking, they will think you're intelligent. It's by default, the brain just thinks you're intelligent. So you see all this stuff is showing I'm highly logical. I'm an expert on this. And I say, and if you can calculate on your phone, you will look like an expert. So I say, this is the formula, whatever you're asking for, the price, say it's 500,000, okay? I would put 500,000 in the phone, right? And then what you're gonna do is, this is where you're gonna have to work it in your head. This is a little bit tricky. You have to take out your commission and the seller's closing costs. Make sense? So, and you have to anticipate the buyer's commission. So if you're always a 3.5, 2.5 guy, which I think most of you are, and if you're not, then you're not doing it right. But anyways, if you're a 3.5, 2.5 guy, well, you know, it's true. Okay. If you're not getting 6% on this side, you're doing yourself a disservice. That's all I'm just saying right now. You're not presenting correctly. Okay, anyways, I would say 95 of these, I never talk commission. Never, ever. We didn't talk 6%, we didn't talk 3%, 3.5%. No discussions happened on that. What?
I'll say for those who are on the conversations and class with me last month, This is exactly what we talked about. I never have an issue talking
About
Commission.
commissions, yeah.
because it's always focused on the net and you're more likely to get a yes to a 6 than a no because
And also, because you do that logic presentation I showed them, they see you as an expert. So it will even distinguish you on value. So if they're talking to multiple agents and they see a 4%er, that 4%er never walking through that. Does it make sense? And it makes you look better. It just makes you look like a better agent. And people mostly buy on value. So they don't care if they feel you're a better agent, they will pay more. Does it make sense? So I've beaten people that quoted 4 or 3.5%, and I'm coming in at 3.5, 6%, and I've beaten them because of this value resolution. So what does it say now? You have to get this, so you put 500,000, whatever your percentage is. So if it's 6, you gotta add 1.5%. 1.5% is the average seller's closing costs when they sell a home, the escrow, title, all those transfer fees. So you gotta add 1.5% to yours, which would be in this case, 7.5%. Make sense? Now, this is in your head. You don't do this on the phone. You have to take it in your head. You got to minus 100% from 7.5%. So you're going to get, in this case, 92.5%. Now, I recommend you just set a standard. So whatever, if you're 6% and 1.5%, then you always know you're doing 92.5%. Make sense? So I would take 500,000. Oh, sorry. I'll take 500,000 on my phone, and I would times it by 0.925. 0.925. And now that gives me my net before we pay off the loan, if they pay commissions and closing costs. Let me click on that. And then I always say, I'm still on the phone, I don't show them it, and I say, what's your mortgage balance? Just to re-verify it. And they say 250,000. And I say, great, I minus 250,000. And I say, if we sell your home at this price with all the commissions, like the average commissions, fees, and paying off your loan, you would net this. How does that sound? Or how does that look? And I would say 75% of the time, like, that looks great, Tom. Then I say, sign. I don't even talk anything. I just write the price and sign. I don't talk commission. I don't anything. I close right there, sign. And the good part is, where you have control now, they will often, sometimes they'll say, John, we just need 5,000 more, 10,000 more. They'll literally come to me with a number, like, we need to net. Now you're having a real discussion because you got to talk with their net. Sometimes they'll say 5 or 10,000 more. If I feel I can push the price and still get the showings I need, I'll let it ride. If it gets above the range that I think it needs, you need to have a discussion about why they need to net that. What are they thinking? Oftentimes, if you get into why they think they need to net, how they need to net, oftentimes you can resolve things without having to pay off everything or do what they exactly want to do to get the pricing, right? But you need to start playing with their net of why they think to do that. But oftentimes, when I do this, I'd say 80% of the time they're coming to my value and they're okay with the net, and we sign. You don't understand. Yes, okay.
You can also use that open house to your salary.
Yeah.
A great way to capture attention.
Yeah, if you do this for a seller that walks into open house and they're like, what our values are? And I go, what do you think the value of your house is? I have the columns here and they say 550. Okay, that sounds reasonable. I go this and I go, how much do you owe on your loan? Do this. And they said, I was like, if you sold your house now based on average closing costs and commissions, you would net that. How does that sound? Literally at the open house. What are you going to look like to that seller? You look like an expert, right? Because experts are the only ones that can go on a calculator and figure out what you're going to net on average right there. That means you're an expert. That makes sense? And what you need to do in this process is make sure you show up as an expert. Any questions? Ahas. Oh, that's right, Paul. Yeah, go there.
So in addition to that, you have open houses, you've already think about it. If they're not ready to sell now, they're now a nurture. You have the name, you have the address, you have the contact and email. So if they're not selling now, that's your monthly drip. Send them a letter, send them a card, add it to your farm. Because that they obviously have interest in that have interest on selling. So why not be the one to continue touching it?
And I'll say this, sometimes I'll get a seller that says, I understand, John, I understand what the value is, but I need this, or I want this. That's your judgment. The good part is, if you do this presentation and you even list at a higher price and do a reduction later, which I don't recommend you do based on the draft, but even if you're forced in that situation, That's fine. If you do this presentation, it becomes very obvious that the reduction conversation is not an issue because they know they're overpricing the home. They know it, right? And they're gonna come back and be like, I was wrong, reduce the price. They're gonna come to you on that, probably sooner than you will. They'll like ask you, hey, is it time to reduce the price? They're probably gonna see it after the first week, right? Two, I'll let you do the judgment on if you want to overprice a home just to have a sign in the yard. That's up to you. Some people like that, some agents don't. Like, if it was in my farm and I was farming, I'd probably do it. If it wasn't in my farm or I wasn't farming, I probably wouldn't. Make sense? But I also had agents, I go, and they're like, John, I love you, I listed this price, but I just can't, I listed this price, but I can't do your price. I said, okay. I have a lot of agents actually, how's this? I don't do Disneyland. I'm not a fairy tale guy. I don't list homes just to list homes and have a pretty pictures and done. And I don't spend a few $1,000s trying to market your home and not get a result of it. I don't do that. That's not the agent I'm paying. But I tell you what, I know a lot of agents. In fact, I can refer you to one that would probably take less commission and do your price. So if you want that, I'm happy to do a referral to another agent for you that will list the price at that price, and you can have that experience with them. And when I do that, they often come off their stuff, right? They often come off their stuff. It's a retort, says, I don't do that. I do this. Because I do real. What the logic is I do real, I don't do fake. And right now, by default, I'm saying you're fake. I'm not saying it to them, but I'm saying you're fake. Does that make sense? And then I use that, and oftentimes they'll come on board. Woo! Okay, aha, any other ahas? Come on, and if you ahas, questions, insights.
That all sounds good, you just gotta be able to say it, not stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So what does that mean? You gotta practice. So guess what? We have scripts and conversations class. On next Wednesday, I'm teaching the workshop Wednesday with Leslie. I'm gonna go much more detail into this. We're gonna practice scripts and talking through this, right? So if you want more practice with this, please come to Wednesday's training. But I want you to show this because I really want you to close more deals, and I want you to close the listings you have. And then right now you're letting the seller dictate the price instead of you dictating the price to the seller. And you gotta use your trust triangle to the Irish.
Yeah, so I learned under John for 4 years, and I'll tell you, this stuff works. He taught me when I was brand new, going on my third or fourth listing,
Yeah.
when how to do this. And I rarely don't get a listing now. I'll choose not to take a listing if we're not in alignment, right?
Yeah,
But
that's what
study this stuff, practice, be a professional. Don't let, how often does a seller sell a home? 3, 4 times in their life? You can take 4 listings in a week, right? Be the professional, study this, learn this, and he's so right about getting the net sheet, pulling it up. I know agents that'll bring one with them or bring 3 different ones, right? However you wanna do it. I'm a phone guy too, I'll just pull it up. Chicago one up, thank you so much. And just say.
Yeah, if you don't want to do the calculation, you can do the Chicago one app and do that, right? Yeah, and just show them that, right? Yeah. Yeah, and I've done that before with the Chicago one and just text them right there, look at your phone, here's the net. Is that
Study
okay?
this,
Yeah.
study this, you're the professional.
But I highly recommend you get them the net right there as you're closing. Get them the net, that's what they'll make the decision on, and you will likely get them to close, even without talking about commissions or. All right, one last aha, anyone else? What'd you learn? Jim T, you're an old cat in this, you're an experienced cat. What'd you learn?
It reiterated a lot of the stuff.
What's that? Sorry, okay. Go ahead.
It reiterated a lot of the stuff that I already have done.
Okay.
And it just basically reinforces it.
Okay.
You know,
Jordan, you said.
You told me I need to stop writing my list prices on napkins.
Yes, please stop writing this. But sellers, remember the trust triangle, you need to establish trust, transparency, right? Empathy and logic. And a lot of you are just trying to get away with empathy and transparency and not with the logic part. And the logic part gets you the price that you need, but you need to get them off their value and onto your value. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time. Hope this was helpful. If you want more and practice more, please come next Wednesday. So we'll be here teaching a high level. So. What? Oh, yeah, so we will have it posted in a circle so you can have all the slides there. So you can sign it. I put some of the scripts in there so you can sort of practice those scripts, right? Yeah. They say, but they teach them element out, because I have fun very soon.
Okay. Almost like you